I thought, just kind of looking back on the week of work, even coming out of this last meeting we just had post practice, really feel like this is probably our best week of practice from an intent standpoint. Been impressed with the guys as far as them, taking last week and recognizing that their preparation and the way we go about our business after a loss that's not the only time we do it. That needs to become the standard and the routine in which we prepare. And I think the guys have done that here Monday through Thursday. Obviously, we'll clean things up in a walkthrough tomorrow, but been impressed with the intent that we've prepared with this week.
Thanks, Coach. Guys, go ahead and put your raised hand functions up and we'll roll through some questions. Terry, you can start us off.
Coach Sarkisian, thank you for spending some time with us today. Would you share what impact the crowd will have on Saturday's game, and how important is it for DKR to be sold out and for the fans to not only have an amazing experience but also know that their ability to have an influence on the game or in the game?
Well, I think they're going to have a really big influence. I think human nature tells you, that we feed off the energy of that crowd, and I think the crowd feeds off the energy of the football team. So on that point, I think that's a really cool positive for our players to be at home. We only get so many opportunities to play in DKR, and so we want to maximize those opportunities. But I think too, we've got a great home field advantage, and I think that it can make things difficult on opposing teams, especially offensively, from a communication standpoint, a cadence standpoint, things of that nature. And then third is just the environment itself. I think there's a great deal of energy in DKR when it's rocking. We love it. We love being here. And, all week long, I've been kind of posing the challenge to the fans and to the students to get there, before kickoff and really get the buzz in DKR going, because it's a special place. We want to make sure it's special on Saturday at 11 a.m.
Chip Brown, go ahead.
Steve, is it fair to say the top backup guard would be Hayden Connor and the top backup tackle would be Andre Carrick? And if that's not accurate, can you tell us who the top guard and backup tackle are?
Well, I would say there are sixth and seventh linemen to some capacity. It depends on who goes down and where. There could be some potential other moves that take place, but I think, that's safe to say.
Anwar, go ahead.
Hey, Coach, I wanted to see, one, if you had any injury updates for us going into the weekend, especially at Troy Amiri. The second one would be, since you're starting Big 12 play right now, do you discuss with your guys like the big picture of wanting to win the conference, or do you simply take just one game at a time approach and you don't talk big picture?
Yeah, no, Troy will not be available this week. I think outside of that, everything that I've addressed from an injury standpoint, and correct me if I'm wrong here, John, but I think everything that I've addressed from an injury standpoint is pretty status quo. I think we recognize, hey, we came here to win championships. We recognize that. We recognize that in the locker room after last week's ball game. And, this is the first step in trying to achieve that. But we don't dwell on it. To answer the question, quite frankly, is we try to give each game all of the attention that it deserves. And then we try not to focus on the result of what the season could be, but rather, focus on the task at hand, and that's Texas Tech Saturday.
Brian Davis, go ahead.
Yeah, Steve, talking about Big 12 opponents, every opponent has this long, complicated backstory with Texas. And I wonder, with a new head coach and a new staff, how much is that helpful? Like you weren't here for all the wild shootouts that they've had with Tech over the years. And do you look at every opponent now? It's a totally clean slate of what these programs are.
I do. I really just try to, because every year, every team takes on a personality of its own. Every game takes on a personality of its own. But I do, like I've said before, I recognize the history and tradition of games. I recognize the rivalries. I appreciate them. I'm a fan of college football. I appreciate some of the great games that the two schools have had historically. But those games and the outcomes of those games shouldn't change the way we prepare or the way we play Saturday. The game could be 13-10. The game could be 48-45. At the end of the day, I just want to make sure, we have one more point than they have. And that's kind of our approach to it. I don't get too nostalgic with our players because again, I think that those types of things, can cloud what our focus needs to be on. And that's the intent in which we prepare and the intent in which we play. Now, but I also recognize this is a Big 12 opener. This is a great game. It's a great rivalry game to be part of. And they're going to come in and we're going to get their best shot and that we need to be as prepared and focused and intentional in what we do to make sure that, we can, we're going to get their best shot, but we need to make sure that they get our best shot as well.
Jeff Jones, go ahead.
Coach, you said that this has been the best week of practice so far, and you've seen the team practice with more intent since that loss. Can you give us a few things that you have seen or heard that have led you to believe that? Like, what does practicing with more intent look like or sound like?
Well, I think, we do our fair share of good on good, as much as we do our scout team work in preparation for the opponent. I definitely believe in good on good for the tempo, the speed, the physicality needed in practice to prepare you for a game. And you could see a little bit of different sense of urgency in that period. The pads definitely were cracking a little bit differently over the last 2 weeks. I think also in some of the subtle details in the game plan, you're seeing guys execute them at a bit of a higher level, especially earlier in the week. And then lastly, like I just said, we have a Thursday meeting, post-practice meeting, where it's somewhat of a pop quiz with everybody in the room. And I love the answers and I love the confidence in the answers in the details of what we're trying to do in the game.
Cedric Golden, you're up.
Hey, Steve. This is going to be the best passing offense you've faced so far. Tyler Shuck's having a big year. What problems do they present? Because they don't seem to be that air raid that they used to be. They seem to be a little bit more multiple.
They definitely are. They're not the air raid of old. These guys will run the ball and they run the ball very well and very effectively. They've got big physical backs that, they run through arm tackles. I think tackling is going to be a huge component for us in this game. Owning our leverage, getting multiple hats to the ball and getting these guys on the ground. I think, the quarterback has been taking advantage of the run game, whether it's been through an RPO standpoint of making good reads and decisions and getting the receiver's ball in space. He's an excellent deep ball thrower and they take their shots. They definitely do that, whether they're go ball, post routes, things of that nature. And then he's a much more athletic guy than maybe you'd think. And so he can buy some time in the pocket and create some plays. And I think the receiving core is very savvy. I think they've got a good feel for, zone coverage, man coverage, and finding ways to get open. And not to mention they've got some big tight ends that are athletic that they get the ball to as well.
Roger Wallace, go ahead.
Hey, Coach, a little more on Ezekama. They really try to find different ways to get him the ball. How big of a concern is he out there?
Well, he's obviously a really good football player. And I think that, the first 2 weeks of the season, he was killing the opponents. I think last week, they spread the ball around a bit more. That may have been a byproduct of the game plan or a byproduct of their opponent trying to, pay more attention to him. But either way, systematically, they've got the resources to get the ball to other players. I think they've got the personnel that can make plays for him. And the quarterback is not just got tunnel vision on him. He's willing to spread the ball around. And so we've got our work cut out for us on that front, because when we do get those matchups one-on-one with him, he's a big physical player and he's excellent with the ball in his hands after the catch.
Cole Thompson, you're up.
Steve, last week, Bijan and Roshan kind of took over with 100 rushing yards, but he had a really good game from Keelan as well. Just how important is it for him to be that third back, and how influential has he been on special teams for you guys?
Keelan's, I mean, he's critical to our success. I mean, obviously on special teams, he does a lot of really cool things for us. He's great on kickoff coverage, obviously on punt return. We all see the block punt, but he's doing a lot of other really cool things for us there. He's a really versatile player offensively, but he is definitely a changeup to the style of runners of Bijan and Roshan. Those guys are bigger, physical, one cut ability, run through arm tackles. Keelan he gets a crease and he's out. And so I think we've seen some of that in the first 3 games. Obviously, the one big long touchdown run, but we've seen kind of that explosive playmaking that he has. So he'll continue to have a really big role on our team moving forward.
Kirk Bowles.
Yeah, Steve, tight end's been a point of emphasis for your team. That position was all but abolished at Tech, seemed like for a couple of decades. Are we seeing a revival of tight ends across college football, you think, and why is that?
I think the game of football it's a bit cyclical. I mean, the trends come and go. I think for a long time, for a lot of teams back in the day, the tight end was really almost the focal point of an offense. It was run the ball, play pass, find your tight ends. And I go back to like the Mark Bavaros of the world and things of that nature, Todd Christensen, those kind of guys. And then the game evolved, and next thing you know, the spread offense became, really popular. But in that time, I think the pass receiving tight end started to evolve into being a different player. And if you even look in the NFL, everyone talks about how great these tight ends are, whether they're the Kelseys, the Kittles, the Jimmy Grahams. I mean, these guys that are really good pass catchers. And now I think there's becoming even more of an evolution of everybody wants the perfect tight end. Now they want to have that guy that can still block, but yet can split out and catch the ball. And why do we do that? Because now the defense can't tell what type of play we're going to run, how we're going to run it, because this guy is a very versatile player. So, I think the game just continues to evolve, and we're trying to attack defenses the same way defenses are trying to stop offenses. So the tight end is a little bit of it's got a unique flavor to him, because if he's multiple enough, he can cause a lot of issues.
Mike Harge, go ahead.
Coach, last week or after the Louisiana Lafayette game, you mentioned that you had to come in on Monday to get your team's attention. You also said that you had to do it again on that Thursday. Did you feel like you needed to do that, or the guys kind of pretty much fell in line and understood that you need to take every day as if it's your last?
I think they understand it. Like I said, I feel like our intent this week was much different than 2 weeks ago, and it was a lot more similar to how it was last week. And I think the players are starting to get the understanding. Winning is fun. Winning's great. We all want to win, but losing is worse. Losing's worse than winning. And it feels worse. It tastes worse. And so I think that they've grasped the idea of, I'm going to prepare and work so hard because I don't want to lose. And then the byproduct of that is I give myself a pretty good chance to win, and then I can enjoy that. So, I think that a lot of that attention is coming from the leadership on our team. As much as I think our coaches are doing a great job of instilling that, I think there's leaders on the team that are not accepting average preparation or average practice habits. They're demanding it now as well. And that's when you got something that's cooking the right way, because when it comes from within, from player to player, I think that's when you've got a really positive approach in your locker room.
Got time for 2 last ones. Danny, you're up.
Steve, with the 4th game coming up, I'm kind of wondering, would you consider at all pulling Hudson from his holding duties in order to preserve his red shirt? And what is your thoughts on managing that 4-game red shirt rule?
No, I'm not. I mean, Hudson's going to play plenty for us this year. And so he's going to hold for us. He's going to play football for us. I feel confident in that. We keep a participation report on every player on our team. at this stage of the season where we're at right now, the best players are going to play, especially when we need them. And, you never know when you're the best player essentially, because injuries can occur. And so we've got to make sure guys are ready to play. I'll be more concerned about that 4-game participation potential redshirt probably in another 4 games. We got to get through 8 games, and then it's like, okay, is this worth it or not? But we're at the stage right now. We've got to play our best players to give us the best chance to be successful.
Last one, Chip Brown, you're up.
Steve, Ovia Gofu was talking about guys still, learning the schemes and learning each other. How much of that is still happening and from a coaching standpoint, how much are you still determining who your best personnel groupings are when you're in 4-man and 3-man fronts?
Well, I think that's real. As much as I'd like to say we got it all wired and we're perfect in all 3 phases and everybody knows every adjustment, that's probably not a reality. And, we've, essentially, spring ball, training camp, and now 3 weeks into a season, there's always subtleties and things that come up that, guys may not know, and we have to fix on the fly, and we have to get right on the fly, and knowing every little adjustment along the way. Or, from a coaching perspective, there might be times where you want to make that adjustment at halftime, but and we just don't know that great. We're not prepared to do that yet. So I think that's part of it. And I think from a personnel standpoint, sometimes you don't always know all about the players until they play, and you can find out about guys, positively and negatively about how they play in game and their ability to execute specific, tasks or fundamentals or techniques or schemes once they get in the moment. And so, it's a really fluid situation as far as who's playing when and how and what we're asking them to do.